Hello, I'm Seung Wan, Professor of Electric Engineering at Chungnam National University. My topic is Rethinking Electric Market for a Net Zero World. And today's target is not giving you solutions, but I'm trying to awake you about the future and what kind of issues will raise and how do we deal with those issues. And I will talk about those things. Recently, the carbon neutrality scenario has drawn a lot of attention. It was released in drafts in August. Currently, our power system has about 500 demand, but it is expected that it has kind of terawatt level of dimension. And there are many sectors using electricity, so the electricity system will increase a lot. In the draft of CDC, it does not talk about the peak or demand. That's what I personally analyzed. The demand pattern depending on industries and the price I considered. Then in the three scenarios, the price for daytime will reduce and like about 200 megawatt peak, and with existing system 170 megawatt peak. And for off-peak period with existing price system, it's about 90 megawatt. For off-peak, people will use the same amount of electricity, and for the daytime price, the demand will decrease in off-peak time. And I will deal with this later. And what the CDC, the carbon neutrality CNC scenario presents, and it is mentioned about the nuclear core, LNG, PV, and onshore wind and offshore winds. And actually, in offshore wind, it includes floating wind power generators, and also it includes hydro turbine, fuel cell, and supergrid are presented in the mix. It's difficult to analyze all the things, but so I analyzed the past experience and estimated the capacity. The scenario 3, the solar power capacity has not mentioned, but it suggested that the power generation need to increase. But what I want to say, like what I estimated, is that lower wind power. And the three scenarios requires 500 megawatts demand and a load, and the nuclear, LNG, and the hydrogen turbine and fuel cell requires about 600 megawatt system. There is an issue then. Many people in this industry knows, and there is a very large amount of oversupply pattern. In a very conservative scenario, like scenario 1, it requires a lot. It will have the issue of oversupply pattern. It is not the pattern of demand and supply. It is the pattern of oversupply. In order to address this issue, actually, I expected how the demand would change depending on price. And the real-time supply capacity is about 200 to 300 megawatts. It cannot be addressed by demand. Demand could could be helpful for addressing this issue, but it is not an ultimate solution. Ultimate solution is storage. when we talk about the future in 2050, it feels like it's real, super like surreal. But we look at the target of 2030, we can feel kind of some real like practical plan. And the 24.4% reduction is suggested by the ninth basic plan for electricity supply and demand. Generally, 25%, 30% from coal, renewable, about 50%. That is the mix that we are targeting in this 2030 target. But in the process of drafting the carbon neutrality scenario, the NDC target has been enhanced in line with the global trend. And today, I think that some like drafts will be released to the media, and those new scenario was released, and then we have to have like renewable energies like with higher than 30%. And renewable 2030, it includes some new energy resources. With the 30% of renewable energies, then the reserves by the existing generators, then renewable could have a faster fastly experiences about the oversupply. We think that the 2030 is very far future, but with the NDC target by 2030, the future is getting closer to us. That is the soap opera of the U.S., the Game of the Throne. There is some line that I like. Winter is coming, and with that lines, I present my own lines. Net zero word is coming. And now is the starting of a real discussion. Then electricity markets, the current electricity market, the electricity markets of the US and the UK can be considered as a standard form, and we studied. But in essence, electricity market is not a market that cannot be determined in just a single natural form. It dependent on the nations and time and period. There is one stereotype that the energy price will be determined by the demand and supply. But from the beginning, there was no pricing scheme. Actually, in the long time ago, the pricing system is about based on the distributed generators, and the utility bill were like issued dependent on the number of birth. So the price could be dependent on the time and period and the nation and the regions. The Korea's target and or independent system operator oriented price bidding pool is assuming a complete competitive market. So horizontally integrated market is implemented in the current market design, based on the actually marginal cost is the basis for the wholesale market design. The philosophy of marginal costs, we decide the optimal investment, the adequate peak and adequate merit order operators, and the base load capacity will be determined. The marginal cost pricing can be expressed in just one diagram. The costs among generators will be expressed presented in merit order. In the past, Actually, in this market, the marginal cost-based bidding pool at the market clearing price, if it is set completely, then it has the same level with the markets monopolized by one entity. And this market is very effective and efficient in terms of cost and economy. It could find out very optimal points. But there is one problem. It's because it is based on marginal cost, so there is some missing money problems by generators. The generators cannot be guaranteed for gaining benefits on their investments. So many market designers kept think about the capacity market to address the issue. And this market that we think that it's very standard is assumed when the massive operators are becoming the mainstream. But we haven't designed the market based on the core firing generation as a mainstream, but we imagined the market with renewables. But the announcement by the government, the renewables are not ancillary resources anymore. In the beginning, I thought that the 2050 and 2030 is very far future, but when we look at the values and measurements and some anticipation 2030, it's not that far future. And the previous presenters mentioned with more renewables, the supply line will look like that because the marginal cost is zero. So the demand line would go to the left side. In this market, the regulations on carbon emissions and new generators integration, and those could cause some variables, but in the long time, the price will increase. In the center, the wholesale price has went down continuously. It could have some fluctuation in short term, but in the long term, the wholesale price has gone down. Balancing costs increased, capacity payments and it has increased, leading to the higher consumer price. So it became very ironic condition. Like downward pressure is on the market and it is not favorable for renewables. But the role of renewables has caused that issue. That is very ironic condition. And marginal pricing only based current market system, we think we have to rethink about the market system. I'm not saying that we have to withdraw the marginal price system, but we could have some other price to make up for the system or replace the marginal pricing system. I think what I mean is that we have to begin the discussion. Then we have to identify what is the problem, and we have to forecast when that issue will happen. And based on the marginal price, the existing markets and the generators without marginal costs, it would be difficult in maintaining adequate amount of capacity. With zero marginal costs, but a very heavy impact on the markets, that kind of resources, how they would respond to the changing market. That is one issue that we have to think. And it could cause the price distortion It is called as pecuniary externalities, and it refers to the case when it occurs when the actions of an economic agent cause an increase or decrease in market prices. Finally, it would happen in the electricity market in the future as well, but I think renewable could bear with it. The current pricing scheme is like based on the external, like outside of the market, not inside of the market. Some parts of a portion is based on the marginal price of the wholesale price, so it's not totally independent from the market. And the short-term price distortion, if it gets serious, then it could make some impact on the decision of investment. In theory, with higher price, it means that the renewable generations is very low. So if we look at the average, average price is important, but the renewable with like generations at certain point of time is very important to consider. So if we have to increase the mix of renewables, then we have to change our policy about the investment in renewables. And also, we have it could affect on the benefits and revenues of flexible resources. Is it a very far future for Korea? And it could be very subjective, but I think it's some point that we have to begin discussion. Fortunately, Korea has established market reform committee, and since the market began, that committee will take very important role. If we complete all the discussions, and actually, I presented 2 presentations last year about the vesting contract and emission cap for carbon to adopt forward market for core. That was something that I presented last year. If we do not set our milestone, then or if we do not consider what would happen in the future, then we would make some different decision that would not happen in the future. And 3 responses from the micropolits. I will consider that we have to set some milestone to achieve our goal, and also we have to imagine the future to implement our current plan. The most important thing here is to actually we have to achieve adequacy, and it is something that we have to do. Then responding to the climate change, reduction of carbon emission, and expanding renewables, those are some goals that we have achieved. And with Korean current technology, we set very ambitious goal. So we have to accept our target, and also we have to review the system in implementing the changes. And sustainable and robust and support scheme required for renewables. And long-term fixed price scheme is partly based on S&P. So fossil fuels price is related to the energy price. So for renewables, we have to increase the portion of average pricing scheme. So long run bidding price will need to expand. and wholesale markets. And also we have to ensure that the generators to compete in the wholesale market. But still there are some issues that we have to deal with to take that approaches. If in like the electricity market is run the market theory, if we go for the auction system, then who will determine the amount of generations to be auctioned, and who will determine the proportions of solar or wind powered generations? So we have to consider the factors as well. The second approach is that I think I mentioned it earlier, but we have to secure zero carbon flexible resources, and to that end we have to guarantee the revenue sufficiency. In the net zero world, flexible resources is needed, but need more flexible resources capacity for resource adequacy, but use less flexible resources in average. So other capacity services and capacities, incentives for them need to be considered as well. And OCODE and KAISO are considering that a lot. Our code is trying to enhance value stream in balancing market with scarcity pricing, and KAISO is dealing with flexibility requirement for load serving entities. The third approach is the most important point among my presentation. I analyzed the carbon neutrality scenario before, and the concept of storage, we should not think it as a kind of ancillary function. We have to build a large amount of storage if we maintain the current system. And based on the three scenarios, and the amount and capacity of storage will be different, but 200 to 300 kilowatts output needs to be stored for 5 or 6 hours. Without that system, we could have some issues in the issues in the supply and demand system. And what is the investment signal for the storage facilities to get into the market? Then we have to give incentives to them, and if we establish the system, how we will operate that system, we have to think about that. And storage has very similar circumstances with renewables. It has no marginal costs, and unlikely to other renewables, it could be charged and discharged. And if there are hundreds of storage facilities, how could we establish merit orders for them? We have to consider and deal with as well. And renewables, actually in Korea, renewables has this imbalance among regions. We should look at it globally, and also we have to deal with locational signal in dealing with this issue. Those are the things that we have to address. It's not that long until the set time. So I hope that the electricity market could evolve in a very proper manner. Thank you.